Okay, welcome. My name is Paul Sarkis, and this is The Ordinary American. Thanks for being here. We are here every day from 2 p.m. We do somewhere between 40 minutes and maybe 60 minutes. It's dedicated to the battle between the right and the left, the battle for America. We see it as a spiritual battle. We talk about faith, freedom, all things MAGA. We very much appreciate you being here. I'm just an ordinary American. I love God, my family, my country. I got a great flag behind me. I read, I listen, I observe, I watch what people do, and I try to watch their actions and not their words. So we appreciate you being here as we try to share information for this battle. We got the midterms coming up in about 8 months. I've said often around this show that it's not just about politics. We need to be more comprehensive because the left wants us unhealthy physically, mentally, and spiritually. Today, I'm going to try to get to some more of those physical, mental, and spiritual things. There's just been so much on the political side that we've needed to get to. We appreciate all the likes, follow, subscribes. Please do all those things for us. It helps get the word out. We got a big response yesterday from the part where I talked about the TDS sufferers. And I have to laugh. They're insane. And the fact that Trump is smarter than you, TDS sufferers. He's smarter than the Democrats. He's smarter than the Republicans. We talked about the airport situation that he cleaned up in a few hours, exposing the Democrats for what they were trying to do, which is to make us suffer, so they don't have to cooperate and make America a better country by getting rid of the illegal aliens and stop corrupting the elections. Okay? We got a great response on that stuff. Trump is smarter. A lot of the people were writing in saying, hey, he has no plan. He's a dope. He's an idiot. And I was saying, he has no plan. He wrote a plan and published it in December. It's called the National Security System. I can't remember the title of it, but it's in the in the Ord American X. You can see it. I just put it on there before I came on the show. He wrote a plan, and he's following it. And if you go back and watch his speech at the start of this Iranian situation, he laid out exactly what the plan was. So he does have a plan, and it is working. And some of you just don't want, some of them, the TDS, you hate him more than you like America. And that is sad. You believe that in order for America to be rescued, I suppose, Trump has to fail so then you can get the right people in. And this gets us to today's show, which is macro right versus left. I named the title of the show because I'm 58 and I used to watch the Brady Bunch, the Johnny Bravo, the suit never fit in the shoulders show. Why? Well, go back and watch that episode. It's season 5, episode 1. I had to look that up. I don't know that. I had to look that up. But it's a great episode. Greg's doing his music, whatever. He's in the 70s. He's a kid in California. He gets recruited by some producer. He goes in. They put a suit on him, they get him to record a bunch of stuff, and they play it back for him, and it doesn't sound at all like him. And he says, hey, that's not my voice, and that's not even what I was playing. And they were like, yeah, don't worry about that. This is the sound everybody wants to hear. Everybody loves it. And then he said, but this suit, this is not really me. And he's like, don't worry about it. Everybody wants to see that. And he eventually comes to the point where he says, well, I don't want to do that. I want to do Greg Brady. And if you don't want that, then I don't want this. And he walks out. And the line from the show is, the suit never really fit in the shoulders. Why do I tell you that? Because that, to me, is the left. Those candidates, they're just looking for a candidate that they can sort of prop up like a cardboard cutout. Look at Mondami. Look at AOC. Look at Mussolini. Buttigieg. We're gonna make the voice sound a certain way. We're gonna put a coat on him. We're gonna create an image. It's not gonna be real. For one thing that I am confident in, that even the TDS sufferers, even the leftists would say, is that Trump is Trump. You may not like him, but he's not putting on an act. That's him. Okay? So this is the Johnny Bravo theory of geopolitics, left versus right. And we're going to talk just a little bit about why leftism doesn't work, because this show is trying to convince as many people to stop voting for Democrats and start to support Trump. The Republicans may not be the solution to the problem, but the Democrats are the cause of the problem. The Dan Bongino doctrine. Brilliant, brilliant observation, because both of those things can be held at the same time. It's not black and white. This is not a Marvel comic, good guy, bad guy. It's not like that. It's just like Trump said the other day. Somebody asked him, are the Russians helping the Iranians? He said, yeah, maybe. And then he paused and he said, but we're helping the Ukrainians. But we can still maintain a dialogue and a conversation over the bigger picture items, and we'll work together. Trump can do that. It's unique to him. Okay? Left versus right. Okay, why, to all the young people, to all the black Americans, to all the Jewish Americans, and all the other traditional Democrat stronghold vote blocks? Leftism doesn't work. It never has. So that we can get into a whole bunch of things around wordsmithing and around intellectual, heady conversations. I'm an ordinary American, so I'm going to try to keep it ordinary. First piece of ordinary. Leftism doesn't work. How do I know that? It's never worked. It hasn't worked. So I know it doesn't work because it has never worked. And it's not just missed. Like, oh, the Vietnamese almost got it right, but for those couple million people they had to kill. Eesh. Oh, the East Germans, they almost had it, but for the people they had to kill. Or the Cubans, or the Venezuelans, or the Iranians, or the Russians. 100+ million civilians have been sacrificed to try to see if leftism can work. And the sad part about it is the biggest, most giant grift of all time. The leftists know it can't work. They're just convincing enough ordinary Americans in this case to go along with it, to keep air in it, to keep it alive. But they know it doesn't work. How do I know they know it doesn't work? Because they tell you they're going to be equality and everybody's going to get the same, and they never do. They always take all the money. Yasser Arafat, the mullahs, Castro, Maduro, the Russians, Putin, all of these leftist leaders, none of them, there's no Tim Cook, there's no Steve Jobs, okay? There's no Michael Saylor, because I'm going to talk about MSTR in a little while. There's no Elon Musk. They didn't make anything. They extracted wealth from other people, in most cases, from the people of the country that they took over. So it's never worked. That's how I know it doesn't work. And then the brain gets tricked. Then we get tricked and we're told, well, they didn't do it right, but we're going to do it right. And we're going to deploy the Johnny Bravo thing, and we're going to bring in Mondami. And Disney looked good, and he was a rapper, and he's a young guy, and he's going to say free buses and free this, and the millionaires and billionaires, they're the evil ones. And then he gets in, and it starts to look a little different. This is how it always goes. They never tell you the truth, because if they told you the truth, get back to what I said before, they know it doesn't work. But if they told you that, you wouldn't vote for them. Okay, so this is the ordinary American version of leftism doesn't work. It has never worked, and it won't work here. It can never, ever work. It's always extracting. Okay, two other items. One is a sort of technical economic thing. I love economics. I just read a lot. I just watch a lot. Thomas Sowell, Mises, Rothbard, the Austrians, Milton Friedman, Walter Williams, tons of great economists, free marketers. They're all realistic. Okay? And what they all say ultimately is the fatal flaw is pricing. The left believes that there's a certain group of very special people who can be in charge and they can price things and then they can bring utopia around. If we can get the right people with the right power in the right positions, we get utopia. They can't price anything. If you really want to twist your noodle, go try to figure out how you'd price your eyeglasses. And the first thing you're going to do is, well, I would go and I would find out what it costs to make it. Okay, and price every one of those inputs. Central planners, leftists, they just want to name the price based on some notion of oppressor versus oppressed or equality or whatever, redistribution. They're always going to either overprice it, which means that nobody's going to be able to afford it, or they're going to underprice it, which means it can't really be produced. And it's way more complicated than that, but that's the ordinary American version, is it's a pricing problem. The free market, where two people engage in a transaction free of coercion, that's how we discover a price. And very often, and you see it with big screen TVs, the price starts out up here and over time it gets lower. As the great Jeff Booth, if you want to really get into this stuff, Jeff Booth is a guy who talks clearly about a real free market is always price deflationary, because in a real free market, the only way somebody will buy your good is if you're making it to solve a problem better than the other guy makes it. What does that mean? Well, if I'm trying to solve a problem like, how do I get my food from the restaurant to my house if I don't want to go there? Well, I got to offer that better than the other guy. Sometimes better is going to be price, but sometimes better is going to be faster, fresher, but it's deflationary. Prices come down, our prices go up. We'll come back to that. The left can't solve the pricing problem because they want to centrally plan. Freedom says don't centrally plan. There isn't a group of people that is smart enough outside of the entire market that can plan appropriately. We need to let the market decide. That's freedom. Okay, so that's the pricing problem. That's the big main problem with leftism on a technical basis. And then I wanted to share sort of the human problem. A lot of people will say that it's human nature, and I think that that's probably true. How I would describe it is that we humans are sinners. We are not born innately good. We are born with what's called concupiscence. I've mentioned this in the past, a draw to the dark side, to use the Star Wars. And we use our relationship and our beliefs and Judeo-Christian values to fight against that. So when you give those kinds of people, all humans, the kind of power that central planners have, you get what you would imagine you'd get. There's going to be at least a few people in that central planning group that are going to crave that power and that are going to abuse it. That's how humans are. The great little James Madison, Federalist 51, I mention a lot. If men were angels, we wouldn't need governments. We can't be Lord of the Flies. We do need governments. If men were angels, we wouldn't need checks and balances. And then, because men aren't angels, we're going to pit ambition against ambition. Ambition. Ambition, try that again, against ambition. Can't edit that out. So that's the human part of it, okay? Leftism doesn't work because we cannot handle that kind of power. You've heard the notion of the benevolent king. Well, okay, maybe there can be that person. How many of those have existed through the years? Don't they eventually have to do something harsh and awful? Okay? They eventually will abuse power, or somebody around them will abuse power. Our founders came up with a unique system, a representative republic, a constitutional republic. And it's a unique system. And it's been the most effective system, as Milton Friedman would say, to lift people out of the kind of grinding poverty that has been largely the base case for all of humankind, for all of human history. Okay, so left versus right. Young people, you are told, hey, we're going to get free stuff. You aren't going to get free stuff. There isn't free stuff. Mandami's now saying he wants to change the, whatever, I think it was the estate tax, and make it so that everything above $750,000, gets a big estate tax. If you live in New York, if you live in ordinary American areas, $750,000 sounds like a lot of money, especially if you have a house that's $300,000 or $400,000. But there aren't a huge number of apartments that people can live in, certainly with a family in New York, that are under $750,000. So everybody would qualify to be taxed at that level. He was lying and he knew it. Okay, he can't clean up the trash. He can't do the snow. All of it. AOC, I don't actually care that she was a bartender. I think we should have bartenders. What I care about is that she just lies about it. She fits a suit. She's yapping away at these things and she doesn't understand anything. And she's had plenty of time. She's been in Congress a while to start to learn and understand. All she'd have to do is listen and watch a bunch of shows, podcasts and Rumble shows, and she could educate the heck out of herself. But she doesn't. Mussolini, Johnny Bravo, he actually may fit the suit. He looks the part. But what's happening now? Reality's butting in. Leftism doesn't work. How do we know? Because California's failing. Nick Shirley, James O'Keefe, Rubin with Muckraker, they're all starting to expose, and there are others, and I'm forgetting who they are, and I apologize. They deserve credit too. They're exposing the corruption. The left always has to corrupt because they can't solve the pricing problem, and from there's a cascading effect of awfulness. Please stop voting for Democrats. It is not okay. It is hurting you and other people. I mention this all the time. California is now trying to get on the ballot a question that allows them to tax your savings accounts. Excuse me. That is not okay. It's already been taxed. Back last year, they had a question to try to do redistricting. There is a sheriff who happens to be running for governor in Riverside County. I forget his name at the moment. Sorry about that. He found that there were more ballots. Let me see if I get this right. There were more ballots registered as counted than there were ballots that they found. And he wants to do an investigation. And the Attorney General is running into court to try to prevent him from doing that investigation. Why would the Attorney General not want to know if the election was legit? Because the left has to lie to you. It doesn't work. They always have to lie. It's always a scam. He lost, and they are going to count those votes. So there's another thing we're going to find out about Mussolini's home state of California. Leftism doesn't work. No matter how sexy it sounds, everybody's going to be treated equal. No, they're not. The Black Lives Matter people bought mansions with the money that they raised. They did not give it to Black Lives. They gave it to their Black life, but they didn't give it to others. That's leftism. There's a great Milton Friedman interview with Phil Donahue. Many of you won't know who he is. You can look it up. He was a talk show host. And Phil Donahue asks him with like puppy dog eyes and empathetic, like, don't you get concerned of the greed that's involved in capitalism? And isn't it just too much? And Milton Friedman says, what do you mean? You don't think there's greed on the left? Of course there is. And obviously there is. The Castros became billionaires. The mullahs, the Ayatollah, the latest one, the first one that was killed in this round, they said that he had a company that had over 200 billion in assets. Where did he get that? Did he have a side hustle somewhere? No, he stole that from the Iranian people. That's greed. That's greed. Okay, there's greed everywhere. It's just that in a free market capitalist system, the greed has a better chance to work out. Okay, now, the other half of this is, and I've said this a lot, it is true. The wealth has not been equally distributed. There is a wealth gap. Absolutely. Young people look around and say, I can't afford a house. It's harder to get ahead. Healthcare is a disaster. What the heck is going on? You are right. That's true. Don't listen to anybody who says that's not true. Don't listen to the people who just say, oh yeah, just work harder. It's not just work harder. The system is broken. Where you're not right is the why and the what's the fix. The why is because of leftism. When you see the pharmaceutical industry owning the regulators, that's not a free market. That's crony capitalism. That's not real capitalism. That's leftism. I know the right people in the right position of power, and therefore I can get what I want. All regulation left to its own devices over time will result in cartels like that. It will. Because they eventually figure out, wait a second, I know the regulator. I can get him to put in a couple of regulations that are good for me and bad for my competitor. Oh, I might have to, duke him a little bit, give him a little wham. You know what wham is? Walking around money. A little walking around money. And then he'll do what I want. Oh, maybe I promise him a job. Maybe I hire him. Now he comes in, and his protege, he's now talking to, and I can get even more regulations. That's leftism, guys. That is not free markets. You can't put the right person in charge because there was only one right person. His name was Jesus Christ, and he's not coming back to take over a regulator's job. Leftism doesn't work, but the system is corrupted. And here's the sad, for TDS sufferers, here's the sad fact. The solution is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a Republican, technically, but Donald Trump is an American, and he's bringing back the American system, which I'll talk about briefly here in a second. He is the only advocate for ordinary Americans. He is going in and saying, let's get rid of the corruption. He's going in and saying, no, we're not going to let Iran have nuclear weapons anymore. They can't hold the world hostage, all of us paying what's called the ITT, the Iran terrorism tax. They estimate between $5 and $15 a barrel over the last 47 years. 10 trillion. Where did that money go? It went to all the globalists and all the neocons and all the bankers and everybody else that is siphoning off wealth. Donald Trump is the solution. He is bringing back the American system. Sovereign nations doing what's best for their country. None of this globalist nonsense. This, by the way, the globalist nonsense stems from this leftist notion that if I can put the right group of people together, the UN, that can control all the countries, then I can create utopia. It's the same central planning nonsense. Neocons just have they fake that they're free marketeers and then they just work the system. Donald Trump is changing that. Listen to Rubio. Listen to Bessent. Listen to Vance. Read the Strategic Security Plan or whatever it's called. It's on my X. He lays it out there. Manufacture things here. Produces more jobs, more high-paying jobs. Get commerce over conflict. Okay, that's going to lead me into my next thing. This happened a week or so ago, this deal with Japan. It did not get very much attention because Trump, again, you may not like him, but he's no Johnny Bravo. He's really him. Some Japanese reporter asked him, why didn't you let us know about going into Iran? And he said something like, why didn't you let me know about Pearl Harbor? I mean, classic. So that got a lot of the press, and the deal itself didn't get a lot of press. The deal itself is a perfect example of the American system he's trying to put in place. He gets Japan to come in and invest in American energy, nukes, nuclear energy, small nuclear energy portable stuff, and natural gas and oil. Why? Because Japan is dependent on the Middle East. So Trump says, hey, we got a lot of oil because I baby drilled, and now we can give that to you. But I just don't want to be a vendor. We want to build a relationship. You've got a lot of money to invest and you need a return. Come and invest it here in our industries. And then we'll sell you the oil and the natural gas. That is an appropriate use of American relationships and strategic defense from around the country. They're already a great partner of ours, but it would be harder for them to go off the reservation. What's he been doing? And you can see this in his plan that he published in December, the National Security Plan. I keep on blowing the name. It begins with an S, National Security, whatever. He's got commerce over conflict. I'm 58. My whole life, the Arabs and the Israelis were fighting. Now he's got Arabs and Israelis partnering and doing business together. That's awesome. Once they start partnering and doing more business together, what he knows is that it's harder then to go to conflict. You'll work something out. You'll figure something out because the commerce is more important than the conflict. The conflict is based on resentments and hatred for thousands and thousands of years. Commerce is going to build peace and prosperity and structure. Okay, so please stop voting for Democrats. That's one of the purposes of this show. Young people especially. Go talk to a friend who votes for Trump. Maybe talk to your dad. Don't just do a harumph, you don't understand, Trump sucks. Learn about it. Okay, learn about him. If you're a Black American, why are you voting Democrat? Democrats have destroyed your communities. Crime, awful schools. That seems racist to me. Jewish Americans, you supported Obama. He was paying the Iranians. Just imagine if the news tomorrow said, Donald Trump took an unmarked plane and sent it to Iran with a bunch of cash and gold coins. Would there be an uproar? Of course there would be, and there should be. That's what Obama did. We still don't know why he did that. We still don't know why. We get them saying, oh, well, it was their money. They're a murderous, homicidal regime. They don't have their money. Okay? Don't support the party that's supporting a country like Iran that wants to destroy Israel. And let's dispel, again, with this nonsense that Israel is leading America around by the nose. That is not happening. America has been led around by the nose by the globalist neocon City of London crew for probably 70 years. Go check out Promethean Action. They talk about this way more eloquently than I can. We're breaking that. Read the plan. Trump has a plan. Okay. We're going to move on from the Johnny Bravo stuff. When I lived in California, I went and saw the Brady Bunch house, which is in Studio City, and it was a lot smaller than I thought in real life. When I was a kid looking at it on the screen, it looked big, but it was kind of cool to see. All right, the Johnny Bravo, that's that. All right. I want to move on now and talk a little bit about health, wellness, physical, mental, and spiritual health. As you know, my most basic concept of wellness is that the greatest life hack anybody can do is to build a relationship with God. I build a relationship with God by starting to pray, to speaking to Him. He wants to know us. He knows us, but He wants us to know Him. And we speak to Him. And you do not have to be a full believer. You could even be an atheist. Just start praying. Pray every day, 10 seconds. Your life will get better. That's how to build a healthy spiritual life. That's a big part, and it's the most important life hack you can do. But there are other things that we have to do. I would say actually ultimately that's the most important and the only thing, but we're humans and we veer off, so we have to focus on other things too, like our physical and mental health. On the physical side, I got some notes so I at least hit some of the big points. I talk a lot on this show, as much as I can, about ivermectin, mebendazole, and fenbendazole, which there are a lot of studies now coming out showing that these repurposed drugs can defeat cancer. One of the reasons why I talk about that is because I want to live in a world where we can beat cancer. That seems like an awesome world to be in. Another reason is because the left doesn't want that to be the case, because the companies that have captured our regulatory agencies can't make money off of these repurposed drugs. You can buy these things over the counter practically. Not technically, you got to go through a compounding pharmacy, but they're easy to get and they're very inexpensive. The reason that I focus on that is because if I want to be healthy, one of the hallmarks of being healthy is not dying, or not dying too early. We're all going to die, but not dying too early. I noticed the other day that the owner of OnlyFans died at 43 or something. We'll come back to that, but that's way too young for most people. So if we can stop the things that get us the most, and cancer's up in there, neurodegenerative's up in there, then there's actually now something, I forget what they describe it, but essentially the doctors make a mistake is in the top 10. So sharing information like this, hopefully more people will try these things, talk to their doctors, and slowly convince them, and then we develop a movement where we're getting healthier and we're not getting sicker. Things we can do. We certainly can educate ourselves on these topics. We certainly can try to take some of these things. I mention this all the time. Joe Rogan did us all a tremendous service. He was willing to try ivermectin in the early days of COVID when other people weren't willing to. He was willing to try it and tell us about it. That is awesome. We should have been throwing him a party. I mean, he gets a party every time he does his podcast because it's so great, but we should have been thanking him. And there are other people too, and we want them to share. Instead, he got, the guillotine, get rid of him. As I'm saying that live, it's coming into my head. There was a court case that was won, I believe, yesterday. It was Missouri. Okay, I'm going to really veer off now. Missouri versus the CDC, I think. And what Missouri was saying was that the government agencies were essentially, ordinary American version, colluding with the social media sites to shape the information we were getting on medical information around COVID, around ivermectin, around all these things. The Joe Rogan problem. And what ended up happening is they settled. I think this is very interesting. The left has often used a scam called sue and settle. The way that it often works is that say an environmental group will sue the EPA and they'll say this or that regulation that, by the way, most ordinary Americans have never heard of, is wrong and needs to be changed. So this leftist environmental organization sues the EPA. They now negotiate a settlement. That settlement is negotiated behind closed doors. But the people who are doing the settlement are on the same team, because everybody who works at the EPA are really the people that work at this environmental group. They go back and forth. They have the same ideas, the same thoughts. They hang out with the same people. So this is just a sue and settle scam. And they end up getting us to change our regulations and us to pay that organization, who then goes out and does more activism. That's the sue and settle scam. Well, what Missouri just did was a version of that with the Trump administration. Except you can see that where I'm going with this, now instead of two, in my opinion, corrupt organizations working against the benefit of ordinary Americans, they're working in favor of it. So they settled, and they said there was what's called a consent decree, which means an agreement between the government or a government and an organization. And it said that they can't do that anymore. They can't manipulate the social media, etc., with false information, and they won't. That's a good outcome, okay? Because Joe Rogan got crushed because all of the leftists who were in charge said we can't get ivermectin out there. Why? Because we know ivermectin works and COVID won't be a problem. We need the problem to persist so we can keep people in fear, so we can keep them fighting with each other. He didn't get the vaccine. He doesn't get the vaccine. Oh, he's a bad guy. And then do the mail-in ballots that got them the 2020 election with 81 million votes that we're all supposed to pretend were real. Okay? Now they can't do that. Now we're getting some more information. And what we can do is thank the Joe Rogans and go try ivermectin or talk to our doctors about it. So I share these things because we want to avoid the top reasons for dying. I just shared with my father-in-law. He has some neurodegenerative issues, Parkinson's and other things. And I just shared with him some articles about ivermectin, and we'll see. Maybe he'll try it. I hope he does. And I hope he gets some relief, because there's some doctors that are starting to say that they're seeing it have positive benefits on that. So what we can control is sharing information. We can also control things like movement, exercise, diet. It's not always easy to eat healthy. It's not always inexpensive. It's not always it's not always productive, because it takes a longer time than just going to McDonald's or something. So fortunately, we have a partner who is now the federal government, which is RFK Jr., who's starting to get those businesses to start to offer healthier or less harmful foods. That's good. What we can do is educate ourselves and try to change our diets. The very simplest way I always think of it is, if we could only eat fruits, vegetables, meats, poultry, fish. That's it. Nothing from a box. We would improve our health immeasurably. Every bit that you deviate from that, it's not a death sentence. If you're eating 10 pounds of pasta right now and you drop it down to 5, that's a win. Great. Okay? It makes sense, by the way, doesn't it, that what I put into my body is going to affect my body. Same thing with these vaccines. What I put into my body is going to affect my body. Food's the same thing. Ancient cultures, all of them, food was drugs. They healed themselves. They knew things that would make them sick. They poisoned people. They knew what to do with food. So the one thing we can do is diet. Total control over that in terms of our inputs. So that's one thing. We can control somewhat our environment. What do I mean by environment? Well, you really want to get crazy. You talk. I don't have it here with me, but I've got a hat that I have that protects my head from EMFs. I can get the right lighting, which I don't have in here. I can do those things. But what I really mean by that we can control, that's much better and easier than all those things, are things like, don't have porn in your life. Huberman does a couple of great pieces where he sort of talks about the mechanics of it, just about how it affects the brain. Oversimplified, there are no benefits to you, to any of us, to watch porn. Zero. It is a 100% negative. And there's a bunch of people who like to say, oh, it's great, and it's just an activity, and I should have the freedom to do it. And if you watch that Larry Flint movie, it's like, oh, I should have the freedom to do it. Listen, freedom to do stupid things is a freedom. It's not going to make your life better. It's not going to bring you, if you're a man, it's not going to bring you closer to your wife. Okay? It's not. Some people wind up with a problem with porn. If that's you, or you think it's you, reach out to us. We'll get you in touch with some people. TheOrdinaryAmerican@proton.me. I bring this up because I was thinking about the OnlyFans guy who died at 43. He died too young. I'm not going to, poop on him. I don't know him. But his business was not a positive business in the world. It was not. It was not. Pretty Woman is a fictional movie. Okay? There's no good that comes out of that from either side. Young men especially, you've got to resist. By the way, one of the ways to resist, which we can have control over, is develop a group of guys that you hang out with, not just your friend group, but a group of guys that you might get together with, a small group they call it in some circles, where you'll just hang out and talk. Same group of guys doing it all the time. Men used to bowl. There's a great book called, I forget the name of it, Bowling Alone, I think it is. And it talks about how men used to have these social outlets where they would get together with other men. And we just don't really have that. The world's evolved. It's different. We're working, we're families, we're doing other things, by the way, that are important, spending more time with families, hopefully. But it can help young men, but all men, if you have a men's group, just a group of guys that you can hang out with. Often it can be done through a church, but it doesn't have to be. If you haven't found a church you care about, try to find a group of guys that you have an alignment of values with. And don't hang out with the guys as much as they may be your close pals. It's hard, but don't hang out with guys that aren't living your values. Okay, so those are a couple of things that we can really affect. We can do ourselves. Diet, keep the porn out, eat good food, develop a relationship with God. These are things we can do. And the mental side is affected by all of that. Food, by the way, absolutely affects our mental health, without a question. All right, I wanted to share a couple of other small items. One is the great C.S. Lewis, who was a Christian. He had an observation, and I think it went something like this. Christianity is either something or it's nothing. And I was listening to the great Father Mike Schmitz this morning, and he was talking about, I forget what he called it. It's like the trifecta. It is God, or rather Jesus, is either lying, crazy, or telling the truth. Now, those are the three options. There isn't a fourth. And I look at that and think that that's kind of what C.S. Lewis was saying. It's either something or it's nothing. Christians believe that he's telling the truth, and we believe it is something. But he's either lying, he's either crazy, or it's something because he's telling the truth. When I think of it in those terms, it helps me a little bit more to connect to it. And then, I'm not going to now, but you can get into proving that he's right versus him lying or being crazy. And that comes from reading Scripture. And of course, yes, eventually, we should all be reading Scripture. Sooner rather than later, maybe right at the beginning, but start praying first. I bring up that thing about C.S. Lewis, and I'm going to dovetail as I'm finishing up here into Bitcoin. I'm going to connect Bitcoin to Christianity. Michael Saylor, the CEO of MSTR, sorry, not the CEO, the chairman, Phong Lee is the CEO. But Michael Saylor has often said, Bitcoin is either something or it's nothing. It's either going to zero or it's going to $1 million a coin and then higher. He believes it's something, just like Christianity. It's either something or it's nothing. It's something. Bitcoin is that too because it's freedom money. Maybe one day I'll do a full episode, but Bitcoin is freedom money because it's got a finite supply. It has no issuer. It has no repealer. It has no governance body, no nothing. It's thousands and thousands and thousands of nodes and computers creating a system that's decentralized. And it's a finite supply. So you cannot print more, which means you take away the ability when you're talking about Bitcoin to create inflation, which is more of something, which increases the wealth gap. And as I said before, the wealth gap is real. Okay, the wealth gap is real, caused by money printing largely. There are other reasons, regulations, the cotillion effect closest to the money, but printing money. Michael Saylor created a company, whatever it was, 40 years ago. He eventually, in 2020, came around to believing in Bitcoin, put a bunch of Bitcoin on his balance sheet. Since then, he has evolved in his thinking and his understanding, and he is like a human AI, just gotten better and smarter and knowing more. And now he has created digital credit. STRC is sort of the most popular security in his digital credit library. There's another company called Strive, and that has a digital credit instrument called SATA. I mention those two because they are a form of fixed income, paying very high dividends and designed to be very stable. I see these as being gifts to society. If you don't believe in Bitcoin, it won't be for you. But if you do believe in Bitcoin, and you should understand it before you make up your mind on whether you believe in it or not. Those two securities in particular, there are others, are, I think, really important because I think they're going to provide this sort of stable, expected income over a long period of time. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that because it tied in with the C.S. Lewis, Something or Nothing. I thought it was interesting. I don't know if Michael Saylor heard that or read that from C.S. Lewis and therefore borrowed it. I have no idea, but it seems very similar. And I have often thought that Bitcoin feels sort of divine in its presence in our life. So explore it. All right, that is our show. Please spread the word. 2 p.m. Monday through Friday here on Rumble and YouTube. We'll discuss all things faith, freedom, and MAGA. We are going to fight the battle between the right and the left. And we're going to try to convince you not to vote for Democrats. Like, follow, subscribe. We will see you back here tomorrow.